All right, we're recording video and we're gonna ready. Oh, yeah, I'm just gonna record this. It's cool. So we're gonna roll in three, two, one, and we're rolling and we're live with Andy Malfarina. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, I'm doing fucking great. What's good, guys?
I'm doing good, but when I read about this shit that we're gonna talk about tonight, I get pretty fucking fired up.
Oh yeah, is one of your things.
Yeah, well, it's kind of part three of the culmination of a three-part episode arc we're doing, where we, kind of this is really the big finale of like what we've been talking leading up to this. So
Oh yeah, you've been hitting what Ruby Ridge, Waco, and
yeah,
now with the dismount on Oklahoma City. I get it.
yeah, and you'll be excited to hear my take on it, but the
Yeah,
audience will not be surprised.
well, I'm excited because you were when you were messaging me about it, you were leaning more with like the whole what is it, sheep dip FBI angle, and
Yeah,
I'm
it
still
glows
like,
in the dark like a Christmas tree. Let's just say that.
I'm excited because like yeah, I was actually like I felt like I was cramming for a test because I didn't look up enough about the FBI shit. So
Oh yeah, dude.
I'm excited to hear about that.
Yeah, don't worry. I got my P's and Q's all in order.
Fuck yeah.
It was there's another kind of arc to it as well, with another thing that we've covered, and namely the LA riots, in that a lot of this stuff, this kind of that's like the arc of citizen journalism, where it started with the LA riots, where it just randomly somebody happened to shoot Rodney King, getting the shit kicked out of him on a home video camera, and then you had this where it's a lot of the same. I think sort of leading from that and other things after that and Waco as well, that it kind of it's part of the beginning. It's maybe the end of the beginning of citizen journalism, if you like. That now everybody takes it for granted that you just shoot stuff on your phone, but this was kind of the part of the birth of that.
I feel you on that.
It definitely became pretty big. But what's it called? So anyway, so like we said before, this last week we did Waco, and so this is kind of like really tied up. They're really tied up together because they happened, or at least they culminate on the same day.
Yeah,
that's right.
April 19th.
Mm-hmm. Also, day before Hitler's birthday. Fun fact. But so anyway, basically, I think the best way to go about covering this is just to start with Timothy McVeigh.
Right.
He's kind of the star of the show, or at least that's what the feds would like. Basically, he was a guy who was kind of a disaffected ex-veteran of the Gulf War, who kind of had aspirations of like possibly being special forces after his time in the Gulf War, but he after 2 days washed out of it apparently,
or was selected for Black Ops.
That's kind of my assertion. Yeah. The thing with McVeigh is that like apparently his family was under the impression that he was, up until the time of the bombing and they saw his face on the news, was actually still in the military and special forces, which is kind of crazy in retrospect.
According to them, during his selection for special forces, out of which he allegedly washed, his take on that was that he'd been selected for special training to be like some kind of undercover agent infiltrating terrorist groups and whatnot, carrying out assassinations.
Yeah.
To be fair, a lot of ex-service people talk that kind of shit.
That's true. There's that. Yeah, he was apparently a big fan of that Soldier of Fortune magazine.
Yeah,
and like he was a
yeah,
real. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no. I was saying I remember he would get into a lot of that stuff. It's you were saying like he would talk like a lot of
He's
dudes
a real
like
Dale
that
Gribble.
would yeah, that's well, like through all the stuff I was reading where they were saying there was like Timothy McVeigh was like talking himself up and he was saying all this stuff, and I saw this thing where it was that like InfoWars interview where they talked to his cellmate and he's talking about all this
Right.
big shit, and it's like on one hand it could be true, on the other hand it's like this, what was this, 95?
Yeah.
It was the 90s. Like you couldn't look this shit up. He could just be talking shit. Like he could just be a crazy guy talking shit.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Except for the fact that we do know that while this was all ongoing was Operation PatCon, which was basically most people will be familiar with the COINTELPRO program in the 1960s, where they infiltrated all the Black Panthers and all those other students again for Democratic Society and the Weathermen and stuff. Basically, in the late 80s, they realized that there was a growing populist right-wing movement in the country happening, especially now that the Cold War was over. The Buchananites kind of were, trying to make big moves in the Republican Party. And the FBI decided kind of what their strategy was is they were going to basically get informants in every right-wing militia or separatist group that there was. And by the time the Oklahoma City bombing culminated, I gotta stop using that as a crutch. By the time that transpired, there we go. It basically, I want to guesstimate, and this is not based off of any hard facts, but I want to say like at least close to a third of every member of like white separatists or right-wing militia groups were feds.
Yeah, and in this case, they're talking about the Elohim City group.
Right. Specifically, that is a huge thing. And especially when you find out like that there's ties to German intelligence and stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
well, I mean,
wait, really? Like 1/3 of that crew was just feds?
That is a big estimate, but based off of the story, the Randy Weaver story is actually kind of where I'm drawing this from, is that it turned out that like 13 of the people in the group that he ended up getting stung on were informants. They weren't literally taking a paycheck, but most likely, like Randy Weaver, they got themselves into some stupid gun charge and then they were on the hook with the FBI.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, because that's what what'll happen a lot of times. Where like that, like you'll get like a gun charge or whatever, and the FBI will get you.
Yeah,
hooked,
that's what happened to Weaver.
Yeah.
And then his wife and kid got shot. So I mean, that turned out great.
That there was that in the Elohim thing, which was was that the same group that Randy Weaver used to go to for barbecues? Was that a different?
No, that was the you're thinking of the the White Aryan Nations, I think was Randy Weaver.
Yeah.
But no, this was the Aryan Resistance Army.
Yeah, who weren't actually, or not technically based at Elohim, but they kind of
they kind of hung out with in that crew. What I think also a little interesting tidbit, and also Andy, I know you're from the Philadelphia area at least right now, but the Philadelphia Nativist riot, the group, the Nativist group had the same initials as the Aryan Resistance Army, by the way.
All right, what did the A stand for in that?
American Republican Army.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, wait. This was the Aryan Republican Army too. Yeah. Never mind. Yeah.
Similar to the IRA, I'd imagine that's where they got that from.
And actually, it's funny. There's some weird connections to the IRA and the Troubles later on in the story as well. By the way.
Yeah. So I mean, they did have this. I think of the people at Elohim who were on the payroll, there was this chick whose name I forget, but I'm sure you.
I have it right here. Hang on a second. Her name was Carol Howe, ATF informant who worked undercover.
Yeah, and she was on the payroll by all accounts.
And she got a swastika tattoo while undercover, dude. That's pretty fucking hardcore.
Yeah,
that's some fucking Donnie Brasco shit.
I mean, she's a pretty hot, skinny, blonde trailer trash chick with a swastika tattoo. I think she just wanted to hook up with Anthony Cumia.
Well, I think she's a little old for him now.
Yeah, but at the time she was pretty. She was
Yeah, I
right in his
suppose.
wheelhouse.
Yeah, so this place called Elohim City, and this comes into play because right before the bombing, McVeigh was known to have stayed here. He made repeated phone calls there, and even also he apparently would hang out with these guys while he would be, because let me go back a little bit. I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, because one of the things about McVeigh was that in the year of and preceding Waco, he kind of became a character in the American gun circuit.
Yeah, he
was like the eccentric guy with like the fucking Turner Diaries booth at the fucking gun show.
Which
he was just like an ancillary character.
Yeah, well, he was like, how fucking Austin has even though Alex Jones is like politically very, different than most of the people in Austin, they all kind of like him just because he's their weirdo.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's like
McVeigh was kind of that though.
Okay. They're like, he's our gun show dork. Like,
yeah.
It's like, we make fun of him. You don't fucking make fun of him.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of like that, dude.
The people who espouse the theory that he was a secret Fed sort of point to this overt wackiness of his as him saying, like, look at me, look at me, look at me. I'm definitely not a Fed.
Right.
But I mean, I don't know what
methinks the skinhead doth protest too much.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So that was another thing, and also like I said, he really was into the Turner Diaries, which, by the way, kind of reeks of Fed to me too. By the way, the Turner Diaries.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Every time a fucking like any kind of right-wing figure or whatever, like militia type figure comes out, they're like, Turner Diaries, here it is. Guy's a fucking piece of shit. Just saying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's what the people who say he was a Fed say. They say, well, the Feds always say people are into the Turner Diaries, and here's this guy
it's
walking
just like
around fucking yelling about it.
It's too much of like an easy go-to where it's just like, he doing the Turner Diaries again.
It literally coined the term Zog.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, so amongst the other people who are there was this guy named Andreas Strassmeyer, who, fun fact, his dad, this is insane that this is fucking another character that comes into play. It's just so glow in the dark. So his father was the chief of staff to the German chancellor in the 70s.
Right.
So he's got some pretty high up connections, and his grandfather was a co-founder of the Nazi Party.
Right. Awesome.
So this just stinks of CIA.
Well, this is the thing with Strassmeyer, is that he's
also known as Andy the German.
Yeah. So he's widely
no relationship. No relationship.
Yeah. He's widely suspected. A lot of people most of the people who've done the digging on this aren't conspiracy nuts like we are, kind of thing. That they're like local sheriff's deputies and stuff like that who were on the scene, and journalists who
real Americans, by the way. There's a lot of, this is a really nice, in some ways, to contrast the horror of this story, there is a nice what's that word? It's like a people story or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of if you watch the film, what's it called? The Noble Lie. It's like, it's all, most of the work this is based on is done by people from Oklahoma City who don't like the fact they're being shot on.
That's such a good point too, because like if you the reason I was like humoring a decent amount of the conspiracy, like I wasn't fully convinced on a lot of them, but like humoring it because in the Noble Lie you look and it's it's like a lot of dudes who are like, oh no, I have a real job. Like I'm not just a fucking
Yeah.
I'm not just like a neck bearded weirdo in my mom's basement fucking
Hey, chill. I'm right here.
hey, no, you look like you own that place, man. Don't
Well, I'm renting, but yeah.
No, but it would be like actual sheriffs, and it would be like scientists, and like they seemed like normal people. They seemed
Right.
they seemed like dudes who were just like, nah, this is fucked up.
Concerned citizens, if you will.
Yeah, not just a weirdo who's like, oh shit, an identity? I'll fucking go there.
Yeah.
QAnon, dude.
And Andy Strassmeyer, like if you think so, a lot of these guys have kind of figured out his German intelligence, and the motivation for German intelligence to infiltrate a right-wing group in America
is what? That's a good question.
Well, is that they have been. Yeah, being a Nazi is illegal in Germany, and it has been
True.
since the war. And they take it very seriously, very foolishly. I think making any kind of opinion,
it makes it more
illegal.
attractive.
Yeah, well, plus it's just wrong.
It sucks. It's not freedom of speech.
But I mean, the whole world's going that way now. But they were. Because of this sort of right-wing resurgence, which about a third of which was the FBI.
Yeah.
This was spreading. This was increasing the prevalence of it in Germany, which I mean, it's very prevalent in Germany, probably mainly because it's illegal, and that.
Or there's feds there too.
But you can see the you can see the CIA selling them on that idea. Because the CIA aren't allowed to put an agent into Elohim City, but the German equivalent is. So they're just like pull a few strings, say a few words in the right ear, and so basically, by the time he's at Elohim City, he could well just be a CIA subcontractor.
Yeah. I would say that he is, but that's just my humble opinion.
You've got the ATF, the FBI.
Sorry to interrupt you, but the video is still working, by the way. I just it crapped out on my end. I just wanted to make sure it's all cool.
Yeah. You haven't moved for a while for me, but I don't care.
Okay, that's fine. Whatever. I'll cut this out. Anyway, so what you were saying before.
I just said it.
Oh, anyway, so this
I'm
guy.
saying that Strassmeyer is a CIA guy, basically.
Oh, absolutely, dude. Also another thing that's worth mentioning the Aryan. I actually have reason on my own ends to believe that most of those ARA guys were doing some fucking money making. They were known in the press at the time because they've robbed like 25 banks.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was the part that seemed like cartoonish, where they're fucking.
Yeah. It's like, where's all that money going to? By the way.
Well, I remember watching that. It's like, yeah, you have these like fucking dickhead white supremacists, like dudes like that, and they're like, oh, and they're bank robbers. You're like, wait, what? Like,
yeah.
How can you be such dickheads and do like a wacky crime? I don't know. It seemed cartoonish.
Well, then not only did that, but also like almost all of them ended up going to jail later for murder. And it always seemed fishy too. And it always seemed like, like maybe they're deactivating him or something,
Yeah.
So and yet, again, so now we're fast forwarding back up to around the time of the bombing. 2 weeks before the bombing, McVeigh telephoned them.
Are we covering the official story and then? Yeah,
should we do that? Should we run through what supposedly, because this kind of ties in well, because it says April 5th, 1995, exactly 2 weeks before the bombing, Timothy McVeigh telephones Elohim City just minutes after he had reserved the Yellow Rider rental van that was used to blow up the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building.
Side note, he'd been seen with the van up to a week before that with multiple people in it.
Of course. And that's one of the other big controversies that are actually publicly discussed.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the official story is that the day of here, actually, let me just pull up the exact timeline of events here.
So this makes me think of you see a lot of Janet Reno in this, and like I spoke about her last week and how she was like trembling during the congressional hearings about Waco, and then whenever you see her in connection with giving statements about this, she really looks like she wishes she wasn't fucking there. I think that I almost feel sorry for her because I think she got this job of the top job in her profession as a prosecutor, and realized, holy fuck, I'm gonna get killed.
Well, she only had a couple more years to wait before she really got to shine with that Alien Gonzalez thing.
Yeah, what's that?
Her face was all over. Oh, you don't know about that? Well, that's another episode, obviously. Yeah. But she was really in the forefront. She seemed really, really sure of herself in that. That was really her. That was her real leaving Columbus moment.
Right.
Our goodbye Columbus moment.
I forgot about Alien Gonzalez.
Dude, he's like second in command in Cuba now.
No shit. Dude, yeah, I remember just being like a young kid, not paying attention to the news, just being like, why do they give a shit about this kid? He must be like popular or something. Just like not paying attention to the news whatsoever.
But yeah, he's a real commie mouthpiece now. But for another day, obviously. Anyway, so the day, okay, so it says, working at a lakeside campground near McVeigh's old army post, he and Terry Nichols constructed an ANFO, which stands for ammonium nitrate and fuel oil explosive device, in the back of a rented Ryder truck. And it says here that there was 5,000 pounds of it in order. Oh yeah, you're right. And now that the official story is that because it didn't physically work before, that it was racing fuel too, nitromethane.
Yeah.
So he drove to the front of the Alfred P. Murrah building in the morning, and at 9:02 he stopped to light a 2-minute fuse, and a large explosion miraculously destroyed the entire building and killed 168 people, including 19 children, and injured 684 others. That is the official story.
And interestingly, so the van was parked about 15 feet away from the building outside. This very
it's also seen by many other people to have an accomplice with him.
Yeah, but and this, even if the thing was completely full of homemade explosive, it was extra miraculous because it blew the walls and windows and everything of the building outwards past the van.
Yes.
So it was a hell of a bomb.
Yeah, I know that. I was going to get into that stuff later, but yes, it is interesting that, if you have a standing building and that a explosion happens next to it, you would expect there to be you wouldn't expect there to be multiple dozens of yards away the opposite direction will be refuse and paperwork and whatnot,
and concrete. I mean, the whole
concrete, actual pieces of rebar and the support struts.
That was the part that that piqued my interest with the conspiracy theories, because I was just like, yeah, that building, because I don't think I had really like looked at a picture of the fucking building. I was like, yeah, that building got fucked up.
Yeah.
And like you see like the Ryder, you see the Ryder truck and the size, and I was amazed too that I was listening to this one podcast, and apparently they had like one security guard that was kind of there.
Yeah.
So like this dude could just roll up and easily get that truck there.
But the bomb squad were coincidentally at the courthouse building across the street as it happened.
There's just so much little shit that like that's fucking weird.
It just doesn't add up.
That wasn't in the official story, but enough people saw this bomb squad truck with a trailer. So it had a trailer with some equipment on it, and it was parked outside the courthouse, which was across on the other side of the parking lot. And so they eventually had to come up with a story for it, and they said, "Oh yeah, one of the sheriff's deputies was just running some errands in it."
Wait, oh, he rented the bomb squad truck and was just like, I'm gonna just
He just took it out for a spin with the trailer attached.
He took it out of the carpool.
I don't know. Like, you know what's fun? There are certain things in the story where you're like, it's like, which one is it? Is it, is it like, and I feel like this consistently happens with government in general, where it's just like, which one is it? Was it the most evil thing you've ever fucking heard of? Or was it the stupidest fucking thing you've ever fucking, because it's like,
it's both.
Yeah, it's like, I could see some fucking dude just being like, yeah, I don't give a shit. I'm like, who's gonna tell me not to? It's like when you see a cop run a red light, you're like, who's gonna fucking arrest me? You know what I mean? It's like, and he'll just like take the thing for a fucking spin, do some errands, but at the same time, you're like, I don't know. It's fucking weird.
Especially being that the bomb squad. Well, here's another thing that let's just talk about the media coverage on that day, because this is a really important component of the story. Is that if you watch,
this really is the biggest thing.
This is this is the fucking smoking gun right here. Is that I watched a compilation of almost an hour of video footage because there was multiple. Oklahoma City's like it's obviously the biggest city there in that state. So there's multiple TV stations there, as you would imagine. There's multiple affiliate TV stations. So there was several different stations reporting live on it as it happened. And they reported things as information came to them. And mysteriously, as the day went on, they all started saying the same thing, which was completely contradictory to what they were reporting on that morning.
Yeah. So in the original thing, though, they had like, because they were talking to the law enforcement and people on the, firefighters and whatever.
Federal people too.
And federal people who were saying, oh, we've found 2 more bombs inside.
Yes. And not just said, oh, we found 2 more bombs. Not only did they say they found 2 more bombs, but they're both bigger than the first bomb.
Yeah, and they've and we've defused them and removed them.
Yes.
So it's not, you can't, if you're like, oh, I was mistaken, it wasn't a bomb, then you haven't defused it, have you? It was a bomb if you're saying you've defused
right.
it.
And if you can tell based off of even visual cues that it's a bigger bomb that was detonated before, you obviously have some idea that it is in fact the bomb.
Yeah. So, and they kept so I was sticking to the media thing. So basically the entire media on the first day was saying, okay.
Well, I would say particularly in Oklahoma City, because it was like a breaking story there.
Sorry, the entire local media was saying.
Not the national media whatsoever.
Yeah. The local media was saying the bomb was inside the building that blew it up, and they were saying that there were more bombs found inside. And then all the stations, by the next day, all the stations except
before the next day, let's also mention that the first responders weren't allowed into the building to save people because of the threat of the other bombs.
Yeah,
and they were looking afterwards for more.
But there's also the aspect that people photographed ATF agents removing rifles and stuff from the scene, which weren't supposed to be there.
Also, wasn't there the thing where like an unmarked truck and a bunch of people with like blank jackets were just removing
papers
shit, and they were like, we can't save people, and because that was the funny part too, because they were like, we have to remove these papers because it's like such a national security problem, and you're like, wait,
what about those people?
Yeah.
No, but it's like also you're keeping that dangerous of info in the fucking Murr building or however you say it.
Yeah.
Because wasn't it mainly a building? There was like a bunch of offices that was just like clerical shit, and like you could get
housing and urban development. There was all stupid shit, like all those dumb.
But there was also
3-letter.
Yeah, there was fucking Secret Service officer and ATF and FBI. There was just a little bit of everything.
I will say this, William, is that the Secret Service, when it's not just guarding the president or ex-presidents and stuff, they actually do have a purpose in their official job is any sort of crime related to counterfeiting in the country. So they do have things to do.
So they should have been kneeling on George Floyd's neck then.
Jesus Christ.
Instead of
Fuck.
leaving it to the poor old Minneapolis PD, they should have
Yeah, I know.
had the Secret Service out for that fake $20 bill. It would have been less of an overreaction than what actually happened, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, you'd expect it out of a Fed, that's all.
Yeah. I suppose so.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, it was just a bunch of stupid shit. Like, and then also there's the notorious daycare center, of course.
Yeah.
But that was mainly for people who worked in the building. You know, like it's not uncommon to have an office building with daycare centers in it. My wife, the building before COVID that she worked in, had a daycare center in it.
Mm-hmm.
What I learned recently was that it wasn't exclusively for federal employees.
Yeah. It was just a local, put up shop there.
I want to say like a little less than half, no, maybe a little more than half, I think, of the people there who died weren't federal employees.
Oh, that's awful. That makes it even worse.
Yeah, that's a real tragedy. You're right. Anyway, yeah, so another thing was, let's not even get into the fact that literally, if you want to get a mini physics lesson here, ANFO, the way that it works is it's not plausible that it could have done the damage that it did.
Yeah.
Basically, the way that ANFO works is it causes an air explosion. It's not a burning explosion. It's more of like a kaboom.
Yeah.
And the way...
Oh, interesting.
So, and also, the way that they had it constructed was a bunch of smaller barrels inside the back stacked up in a grid kind of situation. Each one of those would explode because of the fact of the way that it explodes. It would explode individually. So there's no way that all of the combined amount, no matter how many fucking pounds of ANFO that they supposedly found in there, was in there, there's no way that it wouldn't have exponentially created more force for the explosion.
No, well, the Air Force, lots of people have tried to recreate what it did, and it can't be done. They've tested it on much more dilapidated, rickety, and not as strong buildings.
Yeah, there was a famous story in Iraq or something.
Yeah, there's the Khobar Towers, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big one, but it basically just broke the windows.
Yeah.
And did some superficial damage. And that one was like 10 times bigger than even the feds say that the Waco one was. And it didn't damage
the
structure.
The Oklahoma City one was?
Yeah, sorry, the Oklahoma City one was.
Oh, that's cool.
And the Air Force did a test, and they discovered that when you're making ANFO bomb in several, like a dozen different 50-gallon drums, that even if you do get it all to go off at the same time, the shock waves cancel each other out because they're still like separate shock waves. So it actually reduces the overall, so if you've got 10 barrels that go off at the same time, the force is less than 10 times what
in one barrel. Yeah.
Because the different shock waves all interact with each other and cancel each other out. So they actually went to the trouble of building one of that tonnage that was just one bomb, and it still didn't do it.
I also saw a thing in one of the documentaries where they were saying like the axles of the car were still intact.
Yeah,
and it's like wait, this bomb blew out the entire front
building,
but the car only got halved.
Yeah,
it was just weird.
It doesn't make any sense.
Plus, the size of the bomb, the feds eventually imagined that it must have been, because that's really what they based it on. It must be. So they eventually upped their estimate of the size of the bomb to the maximum that would physically fit inside the box. So they said it must have been right from the back doors to the bulkhead, and but the rear axle was 1.5 blocks in one direction. The front axle was 1.5 blocks in the other direction. So that, as somebody said, well, clearly they would have, but the back axle would have been driven downwards if the bomb was right above it.
That's a really good point.
So the bomb must have been in front of the back axle, otherwise it wouldn't have got shot out backwards. So, but I mean, evidently physics doesn't work like that in Oklahoma because it also sucks.
Don't
all
work
the
like
wind.
that in Dallas either.
Yeah.
They got different like it's a different wind patterns. So
Yeah.
when explode,
It's the Coriolis effect. You understand?
Yeah.
They're a little below sea level. So.
Yeah. it blew the back axle away from the truck, but it sucked all the windows and columns out of the building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty incredible. It must be.
It also apparently the explosion turned because instead of going in a straight outward motion, certain pillars on the outside on the side that it exploded on, and then not the ones next to it, but ones behind that one next to it, also fell down.
Yeah. And they didn't just like crumble. Like this is the other thing with the Ampho explosion, which is like an air blast.
Yeah.
You could, even if it was big enough to damage the pillars, it would like crack them and bend the rebar. And if it couldn't do that to the point of failure, but if it did, it'd just be like a tangled mess with all big cracks in it. But the columns were just sheared neatly off.
It's thermite paint.
Yeah.
I watching all this stuff. I realized I don't know shit about explosions because it's like
most of the physics I know are related to conspiracies. So take that with what you will.
Oh yeah. I think there's a lot of people. I think the only physics knowledge I have is having to do with anything conspiracy related.
Yeah.
And I have very little in general. But no, it like that's what was hard. I almost wish I was like, fuck, I think I was like underprepared because every little thing you like uncovered, you're like, well, now I got to go look up 5 other things to double check. So it's like, I got to go learn explosion patterns and physics to fucking know if this guy's making any sense.
Yeah.
Well, that guy, that Pritchard, I think the guy's there. Or what was his fucking, I have it written down here.
I mean, they have all this comes from the guy who
retired Brigadier General Jen Partons was the guy. He actually does a very nice explanation of it if you watch the video that he put out.
Yeah, and he was head of weapons development for the Air Force. He worked 20 years for the Air Force,
right?
Studying how to design bombs.
He's cute, dude.
Yeah.
Yo, speaking, you said, oh, if you, you're like, look, he did the talk, look that thing up. The one thing that piqued my conspiracy theory, like my conspiracy brain the most was it was like, it felt like it was hard to find shit. Like, like,
oh yeah,
like going on YouTube or Googling or whatever, it just felt like it was hard to find shit.
It's been going more and more like that as time goes on. Dude.
Yeah, and then also another sidebar, I was looking up because I just tried to Google. I did this before doing the podcast. I tried to Google like, just give me an article where you're like debunking all the main Oklahoma things. Like I remember there was a great, I think Modern Mechanics or something like that did a great like 20 bullet point, like here's things about 9/11, these are why they're false. I was trying to find something like that with fucking Oklahoma City, and bro, I saw like 4 or 5 articles immediately being like, there was nothing, because apparently in those papers there was like a lot of shit having to do with Hillary Clinton of all people.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's a big thing. Yeah.
My fucking sensors went off because I immediately saw 5 articles that are like, nothing to see here about Hillary, and I'm like, well, that's suspicious.
Yeah.
Yep. You don't see any refutation of the stuff we're talking about with the physics. All you see is whoever question the motives of whoever's telling you about this.
Well, yeah, it's the Chuck Schumer angle of you can't expect us to believe that the government would do this. It's an insult to the brave men and women of the FBI and the ATF. Right. Okay, Chuck.
It's also a thing too. It's like I was saying before, there's a shitload of stuff that like the government, the CIA, the FBI, that what they will do that will just be dumb as fuck. But there's enough stuff out there that we just know that you're like, it's fair to be suspicious. Like you can't. I always say, man, there's enough stuff out there that it's like like I get it. Like you can roll your eyes at conspiracy theories, but you gotta get where a lot of them are coming from. There's enough crazy shit out there that like anyone's gonna get started on a conspiracy theory.
I mean, look, I think they want the conspiracy theory to exist. I mean, they invented the term, and you've got
They literally did.
Yeah, and for instance, if they wanted to put it to bed, they have the security camera tapes from surrounding businesses and the Murrah building, because the contents thereof are referred to in FBI reports or federal reports of some kind.
The Freedom of Information Act declassified a lot of shit.
Yeah, and so they've seen the tapes, but they say they can't find them. Now, if they wanted to, if they wanted to prove that,
it's just like, oh, we misplaced them. I don't know where they are.
Dude, they could just be like, here are the real tapes and deep fake fucking Timothy McVeigh. Just shoot a whole new video. They did it for the fucking moon landing. Why can't they do it for this?
Dude, I was just gonna bring that up. I never considered any of the moon landing stuff, and then they were like, "Oh, we taped over some whatever it was.
It's all gone."
And I'm like, "You did what?" No.
We really needed the hard drive space, dude. I was downloading a really hot JPEG from a news group.
We were out of blank VHSs. We had like, what? That's the thing. You just hear this shit and you're just like, okay, like that's not completely evidence to either direction, but it's fucking weird.
Yeah.
But it's like you wouldn't dare tape over your wedding video, would you? Because your wife would fucking kill you, right? And yet
exactly. But they're taping over. I forget what the moon landing thing was, but it's like you're taping over.
They supposedly destroyed all of the technology that got them there.
Yes.
Yeah, you're like, what?
They de-invented it so it can never be done again. Because it's not an idea; it's just the things. Once you've made it, you have to keep it safe, otherwise you could never make it again.
It's like it got you to the moon the first time. You wouldn't want to keep that?
Yeah.
Yep. And they deleted all the telemetrics and, the fucking physics of shooting you up there and shit. We can't even look at it on a fucking, like a word pad, fucking the WMP.
Yeah.
Did you guys see that? Not to go on another tangent about the moon landing, but did you see that? I forget what the movie's called, but it's like a mockumentary about these dudes who were hired to fake the moon landing.
Oh, so it's about Stanley Kubrick's life?
Yeah, no, it's called like Avalanche or something like that.
I have not seen that. Sounds good. It's right up my alley, I tell you that much.
Avalanche. Yeah, I think that's what it's called. But yeah, you and your listeners would fucking love it.
Yeah, I'll look it up after the show and check that out. That sounds funny. Anyway, so just to go back to the media is so important in this story. Like one of the things, like in the first few hours and this is right after that multiple bombs thing happened, they had a counterterrorism expert on one station, and he said that based off of what he knows about terrorism, this is obviously a very coordinated and sophisticated terrorist group, and the fact that they were able to collect undetonated weapons will be invaluable in determining who is responsible for this.
Yeah. Cut to there were no weapons.
Yeah, and cut to it was just one racist guy.
Yeah. I mean, we've sort of digressed from the media angle. So all the local media changed its tune over that night, basically. But except for one channel, which kept on
KFOR, it was called.
Yeah, and it never changed its tune. And they were looking into it and giving people airtime. And if a year later they got bought by the New York Times group, and the station director was fired. The lead journalist who was covering the Oklahoma bombings was fired, and they got rid of all the tapes and shit, and quickly jumped on board with the CIA angle. So that's how that works. It's the media. It's that guy that goes on the Scott Horton show, who's an ex-spook. He calls it the Mickey Mac. It's the
that guy. I forget his fucking name. The whistleblower guy.
Yeah, it's the media I can't remember what it stands for, but it's basically the media industrial lobbying military complex. Whatever, but I forget how he makes it work into Mickey Mac.
Well, that's why he was a top guy at the CIA, and we're faggots.
Yeah.
You got to be good. What's that called? An anagram? You got to be good at anagrams to get into the CIA.
Yeah. You got to be good at acrostic poems.
I don't even know what a haiku is.
What is it? It's like 7, 5, I don't know.
It's 757, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay. Another thing was there's a lot of eyewitness. I mean, again, eyewitness is what it is. I understand that there's problems with eyewitness things, but when they all have the same story and
24 of them,
and they don't know each other
to each other.
Yeah. And they all have the same story, which is when it happened, it felt like there was an earthquake underneath them. There was a rumbling, and that something underneath them was like there was some sort of disturbance, and then the windows blew in.
Yeah, there's so they had time after the first explosion. People had time to get under the desk because they thought it was an earthquake. I thought it was an earthquake. I dived under my desk, and then while I was under my desk, all the windows blew in.
Yeah, which, by the way, air explosions are really good at blowing in windows.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's the thing. The van did explode, and it left a pretty small crater.
Right.
But
about the size of a van, by the way.
Yeah, the feds wouldn't let anybody. I mean, it's kind of, if you look at the size of the crater and the size of, that's why they covered the crater up, and they don't. But there are some photographs of it from on the day.
Yo, I didn't even think of. Sorry, not to cut you off. I didn't even think about that because the crater's one size.
Yeah.
But then the fucking explosion. You'd think
it takes like 3 minutes of scrutiny to fucking blow holes in this thing.
Yeah, because the crater's like directly under the fucking van. You'd think it'd be bigger if it caused the explosion that big above it.
Yeah, well, they reckon, sort of image analysts reckon that the size of the crater was about 16 foot across, and sort of the depression. Yeah,
that's about the size of a Ryder van.
Yeah, and the size of the impact off to one side, and it didn't damage the courthouse on the other side of the parking lot either.
It did not, except for the refuse that blew off of the actual building.
the
wrong direction.
There were bits of the Alfred. So it's a pretty big parking lot. And there were bits of the Alfred Murrah building were piled up against the side of the courthouse on the opposite side of the parking lot. So that a lot of that building had gone that way. But this crater I mean, if you've never seen the photograph of it, dear listener, please look it up, because this was a big building, and it's completely demolished.
Yeah, it's not about a building whatsoever.
It took about half of it out because there's like two bits at the end. There's a bit at each end that remains.
I'm looking at it right now. There's actually, it's basically two. It's like it's hollowed out, kind of.
Yeah, so half of it. So half of it is gone, hasn't it? Half of the frontage of it is gone, and then there's more than half of it gone, because then there's a bit that goes all the way to the back that's gone. That's
right, and specifically one place. It's not at all. I'm looking at where the crater is. It's, by the way, where they piled all the refuse and put a bunch of fucking plywood down. But the place where the crater actually is about 12 feet to the right of where that big indentation is, and then also where the actual truck was. It's much closer to where the truck was.
Yeah, so there's less damage nearer the truck, is what we're saying, than there is further away from the truck, which is just unbelievable.
Like I said before, explosions don't turn corners.
Yeah, they don't. And then there's a whole other angle here of the law enforcement and people, because a lot of feds are, there's some. The guy who was in charge of the investigation came out, in the local FBI office has come out and called bullshit on this as well.
Really, the guy in charge?
Well, I'm not sure. He was a senior FBI guy who was on the investigation, and he's come out and said the investigation's bullshit and it's a cover-up. And of course, the FBI the other FBI agents give interviews saying that, not directly calling him full of shit, but saying, "Oh no, I don't understand where he's getting all this from," and So, but there's a local sheriff's guy who says that he was concerned and he was asking questions about it after the story changed.
Oh yeah, the Terry Treacher, I believe.
Yeah,
his name was.
He was saying one of the feds had a quiet word with him and says, "Look, people who ask questions like that have a habit of ending up dead." And that did happen to a police sergeant who was the first guy on the
that was
scene.
the guy. Terry Treacher was the guy's name. Yeah.
So Treacher was the guy who got killed. He
was building an independent case on it, and then went to he said that he was going to his lockup where he was keeping his documents related to the Oklahoma City case at an odd hour.
He said to his friend, "I've got to go drop this stuff off. As soon as I've lost the feds that are tailing me, I'll meet you for dinner." Right. Cut to next morning, he's found in a field half a mile away from his car, which is locked with the keys inside and a bloody knife in the glove box. He's found having committed suicide by shooting himself through the top of the head from far enough away not to leave powder burns, with self-inflicted.
I also want to. I look pretty close at that.
Ligature marks, handcuff marks on his wrists. So he's handcuffed himself, tortured himself, and beaten himself up, and shot himself from a distance in the top of the head.
And not just that, but it was from behind too, because it came through the top of his head and went out the front cheek.
Yeah.
Was
he the dude who had like 13 stab wounds?
Possibly. Or was that Mildew or whatever the fuck his name was?
There was like a first responder that I guess.
Yeah, that was him. Yeah,
this is him. Yeah.
He was the first guy, black guy.
Yeah. I swear to God, I think they said he had like an insane amount of stab wounds.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, what?
It's fucking crazy that
dude. Everyone linked to fucking weird shit always has weird fucking suicides.
Yeah. And
I wouldn't. That's a funny word for murders.
Yeah. Suicides.
And then there was that and then also at this stage, there's still a manhunt going on for the official story is still that there were two guys for a while after the event. And so they're looking for this John Doe too, because it's established that there are two people who got out of this truck. Mm-hmm. And so there's the biggest nationwide manhunt the feds have ever done. And it turns up this guy in a case of mistaken identity who they put in the federal lockup in Oklahoma City. And
he fits a description in terms of modus operandi of previous crimes and a physical description.
Because he's a bank robber and
former bank robber.
He's got he's short and stocky and he's got a tattoo on his left arm which is what John Doe 2 has. He does look a bit like him. And they basically he Epsteins himself in jail.
Totally. And one of the most brutal Epsteins ever, by the way.
What the feds didn't realize was that his brother's a lawyer. And also that they were trying to get the body cremated before anybody saw it. And they didn't want an autopsy done on it, but they do autopsies on all custodial deaths in Oklahoma. So the medical examiner had done an autopsy, and basically, I guess the medical examiner kind of colluded with the brother to make it. They got the body back eventually,
right?
And he had the soles of his feet had been beaten. He'd been. I think had he been stabbed as well? I think so.
He'd gotten he'd been beaten in the face. His body was completely bloated and they put makeup on him to make him look better.
He had 2 depression fractures in his skull.
Right.
And his throat was cut. That's right. His throat.
Oh, that's right. His throat was cut and he had been strangled and they ruled it a suicide by hanging.
That's what I'm telling you, dude. These fucking weird ass suicides.
Hey, but Andy,
suicided all over.
Can you guess what happened to the surveillance tapes, Andy?
Oh, did they did a whoopsie daisy, didn't they?
They lost them.
Good
Oh, no.
guess.
Well, I'm saying, dude, you always have weird suicides, and the only evidence to prove you wrong, we lost it.
Yeah, and then you've got one of this poor lady who's the grandmother of two of the kids who weren't even federal employees. She just dropped.
Yeah,
them
she's
off
just
there
some
for
poor
daycare.
black lady who had two kids there.
Two of the grandkids that she looked after, and she dropped them off there, and then she finds out about the bombing. They've both been killed, right? And so, sometime a year or two later, I mean, everybody starts off believing the official story, including her, but then it's insultingly fucking. It's they're not trying to convince anybody really. It's just like it's the same.
This is the way it's going, and if you're not coming
like
along for the ride, you're a fucking weirdo conspiracy theorist.
So like it's like with Waco, they managed to convince everybody that they deserve what they got at Waco, but it doesn't matter if anybody who knows anything about it knows different, because most people don't know fuck all about it. So they're like, we'll just convince most people, that's enough. And so this woman sort of started following up leads on her own, not really investigating. She says she still kind of believed the story at the time, and she just wanted to talk to people who knew something about it. I don't know, for some emotional reasons or what.
Closure.
She's a woman. I don't like to use Freudian terms, but she went to the Ryder truck rental place where this is where the leader they had seen when the truck was rented. The people who worked there had said, yeah, it was definitely two guys who were together, and they drove off in the truck together. But then the feds, because that didn't fit their story, or more likely because they found out who the other guy was and he was one of them, they said, oh, well, that doesn't fit the story, so the staff there must have been mistaken. And so this woman goes there believing that there was only one guy, and speaks to the owner of the place. It's only a small little place in a one-horse town, and says to the guy, she says who she was, and he says, oh yeah, I'm sorry about what happened and all that. And she says, look, I just wanted to know, is there anything you can tell me about what happened when Timothy McVeigh came to pick the thing up, and what kind of a guy was he or whatever. And he says, oh well, it wasn't just Timothy McVeigh, there was two guys. So they were still adamant about it, and she was like, really? Yeah, there was two guys, I was here, I saw them, they were together. It's like, so like that was when I think that converted her to like, oh no, I've spoken to this guy.
It's a red pill moment, if you will.
Because when it's easy, they try and slander these eyewitnesses, that all these 24 eyewitnesses in Oklahoma City who saw this were just doing it to get on TV. They were just saying it because they knew it was what they wanted to hear, and blah blah blah.
Monica Lewinsky is a stalker.
Yeah.
Well, it's like the same logic with the Cosby shit, where it's like one or two girls you could follow the logic of being like, oh, they're just trying to go but then once you get, what was it like?
Yeah, when it was like 46 or something, it's like, all right, not every one of those bitches is lying.
You're like, well, even if it's like a fourth are telling the truth, it's still horrible. You know what I mean? It's
come on, what were they wearing? Fucking jammies.
But no, it's the thing. It's just like once it gets to a certain point, you're like, all right, they can't all be crazy.
Yeah, well, clearly they're not, because at the time that this is talking on the day of police statements, they're trying to help the police.
Oh, let's not forget the thing with some of the first people that came out to see people in ATF uniforms, and they asked if they were okay. All their guys were okay, and they informed some of these witnesses that, oh yeah, they knew they weren't supposed to be in there today. There's something bad going on.
Oh yeah, that was the other thing. They were like, all the ATF agents were like, yo, don't show up to work today.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
got it on. They got a message on the page.
I like you. Don't come to school tomorrow.
They're all on a list, like the good ones. The
Yeah.
No, and like that's an interesting point too about like when you were saying like when they got their statements, like it was during the day, like the day of, before the news like all got the same story and all that shit. So it's like it in once again. Wait, what year was this? 95 or 94?
Yeah. And wasn't there a news station that got a phone call saying that the Mirror building had blown up half an hour before it did blow up?
I don't recall that, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was the
something.
fucking case.
Yeah.
I mean, that's another Waco thing, wasn't it? That they were briefing about that the like 2 days before they did it.
Oh yeah, Waco. They had like news reporters roll up like 10 minutes before.
They were it was kind of like that Roger Stone arrest.
Yeah.
They're all waiting before it even fucking happened. Yeah.
There's just a million high quality video of it. Like
it's like, fucking scumbags out
there. Yeah.
I mean, like what I call that a breach of, even if it is a legit operation, doing that is a breach of. It's unprofessional in the extreme, because
especially in a matter of criminal court or criminal.
It's a breach of
justice.
due process, and I mean, one of the topics we're going to cover is our kind of. I don't know if it's the British Waco or maybe it's the British Ruby Ridge more like. Was a guy called Alfred Dryden, and that. They had the press on the scene for his arrest as well and regretted it, let's say. So it's like I just don't think it's right. I think like there should be some kind of law enforcement stroke accused confidentiality until the thing gets to court. It should be like, okay, we're going to arrest you, we're going to lock you up, and then we'll have it out in court. We shouldn't be creating these dramas for
I mean, if you're in the neighborhood, like you just got lucky. But if like we're doing this specific, like before someone's been like had due process, and you're doing it specifically to like shame them, it's like that's not. I don't know.
If I'm going to be accused of something, I want to be the first to know before the press. I think that's only right.
Exactly.
One other thing, so I forgot to mention. So after the bombing happened. Our old friend Andreas Strauss, our old friend Andy the German, he got on a plane with an ex-CIA pilot to Mexico City, and then flew back to Germany, where he is still in residence today.
You just say, imagine how cool the sunglasses they were wearing on that flight were.
Oh yeah, dude. I think they're the ones you wear, dude.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what was another thing? Oh yeah, so there was a mystery limb. That was one thing.
Oh yeah, that's something. The guy from the guy who like worked 20 years in Northern Ireland as the head coroner stroke explosion investigator said we'd never had a thing where we've had dead bodies where we've got missing limbs and we can't find the limbs, but we've never not found
a limb without the body.
Yeah, so we'd never not found a victim in a bombing. But in Oklahoma, there's one
extra left leg.
Yeah, there were 8 people who had their left legs traumatically amputated in the explosion, but they had 9 left legs.
Yeah, I mean, I
can only imagine what that is.
Fuck knows.
Yeah, and there's probably no record of like.
I mean, maybe it was John Doe 2.
Yeah, man.
It could have been.
Yeah. They fucking threw him in right as the explosion was happening. Double patsy.
Yeah.
No, I'm trying to like think like, I mean, maybe you could check death records around that day. Like, is there still a missing body that would be hanging around over there that day?
I mean, so many people go missing though, don't they?
You could also possibly feasibly imagine, like I said before, this is an FBI ATF agency offices. They could have had some disappeared person stashed there or something, you know.
They could have.
That's just spitball in here.
They could have an extra limb in fucking evidence.
So
it was another member of the Clinton kill list.
Talking to sex offenders, I've mentioned Rolf Harris on the show before, who's an Australian entertainer who was like the most famous guy in England in the 70s. And he had a #1 hit single with Jake the Peg, who had an extra leg. So it could have been that one of the guys was Rolf Harris.
Yeah, could be. Okay, so what else we got here? So let me think of any of the other fucking wackadoo shit that happened in relation to the actual explosion itself. Or should we jump just to McVeigh being apprehended?
Yeah, let's carry on with the narrative, I think, because I think we've hit a lot of the points on what
I think I'm pretty happy with our showing here.
Yeah.
But anyway, so what's it called? So McVeigh was escaping in a car, a yellow, I don't remember what make it was. Oh, well, with no plates on it. And he was pulled over for speeding.
Again, talk about LARPing the extreme white supremacist right-wing nut job of in making your getaway from an enormous bombing, the largest terrorist attack in American history today.
In a conspicuous car, yeah.
You're still not going to get tags on your car.
What's the official explanation on the car?
I guess he had a getaway vehicle.
Yeah, it was his car, and he refused.
Where did he get the car from, though?
Well, I guess maybe he left it in town or something was the story.
Yeah, you could easily park it a block over, light the fuse, and run over.
I'm just trying to like once again, just humoring it for a second, be like benefit of the doubt. I'm like, what's the scenario where you go get that car, set it up, and at no point do you throw a fucking license plate on
exactly,
it?
that's what I'm saying.
It doesn't make any. At some point, you're throwing a fucking license plate on that because
even if it's stolen.
Yeah, he got pulled over very quickly for not having a license plate. So, like,
yeah,
how long? He had the most cornball T-shirt on, by the way, ever.
Oh yeah, wasn't it
There's a picture of Lincoln, and it said "Sic Semper Tyrannis," which is what the guy who shot him said right before he shot him. And on the back, it had a picture of a tree with 3 drops of blood that says, the tree of liberty must be refreshed with the blood of tyrants from time to time, which is a Thomas Jefferson quote.
Based.
Pretty based, yeah.
He's rolling around with a fucking meme on his shirt.
Yeah.
He made the first fucking meme.
But it's going back to that thing of how he was LARPing as this right-wing nut job. I mean, it's cartoonish enough beforehand, but to actually make your getaway looking like that is insane.
Looking like Mickey and Mallory, dude.
Yeah, it's fucking...
Natural Born Killers. Yeah, all right, whatever. I tried.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I forgot. I saw that movie. I forgot their names.
Yeah. Anyway, so he had a weapon on him, and I guess he was like, he was doing that fucking. Like I said, the same thing you were saying, LARPing. Like he had an obvious bulge in his pants where he had a concealed weapon that he happened to be not like he had a concealed carry license. The guy worked at fucking gun shows all the time, but he just happened to be picked up in a place where it was invalid.
Yeah. So he came quietly. And so he was already in the county lockup when the feds started looking for him.
Started looking.
Yeah. And so there it was. It was all done and dusted within a day. Right.
And so there's some pretty salacious quotes. I don't actually know. I guess there weren't really that many salacious quotes, but the media characterized him as like an extreme right-wing racist type.
Yeah.
And white supremacist. And obviously I don't trust the media, but I did decide that I would look into somebody's opinion I do trust. And that would be one Theodore Kaczynski, the Unabomber. Right, yeah. And because he was in lockup with Timothy McVeigh. And he mentioned that so he was again, another thing that the media portrayed him as was like a really withdrawn and like shy person that had like depression and like narcissistic personality disorders and stuff. But Uncle Ted says that he was a really outgoing, friendly guy. Yeah. He said that he had his his rumor of being racist preceded him, but he didn't. But Ted did not notice that he was any. He didn't seem racist at all, is what I'm trying to say,
Yeah.
and would often pal around with the black inmates in prison.
Yeah, wasn't there a thing too where he like I heard he checked out the white supremacist stuff and was just like, not for me. Like
Yeah.
I think he was more about guns than anything.
Yeah.
And but I think it's I'm pretty convinced by this LARPing idea, because if you think about it, like if you start looking at all the narrative of Tim McVeigh through that lens, he just happened to drive all, he was fortunate enough to, having driven all the way from Michigan to Waco during the Waco siege.
He made sure everyone there saw his face, by the way.
Yeah, he got himself looking nice and cheerful and like an outgoing guy on TV cameras. Already set up to, this is, I'm a guy who's pissed off about Waco kind of storyline. I think that I mean, I don't know if it's true or not, but it's like it does seem too good to be true, doesn't it? The kind of profile that he built up for himself.
What's it called? Kaczynski said though that they're like, he definitely noticed a fixation on weapons.
Yeah.
Like McVeigh apparently in prison was like, so what kind of guns did you have up in that fucking cabin, dude?
Yeah.
And he asked him if he'd ever shot armor piercing weapons, to which Ted responded, why would I ever need to have fucking armor piercing weapons hunting in the woods?
Yo, did Timothy McVeigh weird out the Unabomber?
Yes. Yeah,
that's fucking great.
Yeah.
What else is there anyway? Oh yeah, so he actually, again, in their brief chats about ideology, he mentioned that McVeigh mentioned that he didn't feel that he kind of resented the fascist, racist like angle in the right-wing militia movement, and he was more of like a freedom fighter kind of guy, like you said.
Yeah.
And what else?
Oh yeah, that also reminded me every time they brought up like they like, because did you guys watch the PBS documentary? Because that's a real.
I think I've seen it before, but not for this episode.
Yeah, because they basically whenever they bring up any like government entity, they're like, well, obviously they had to do that. Obviously.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
and then every time
they know where their fucking bread's buttered.
And then yeah, exactly. They're like, well, it's in the but and then I just bailed on whatever that was. No, but then they kept bringing up they'd be like anti-government, and then they just have like spooky music, and I'm like,
yeah.
Well,
I swear to God, they were purposely just being like, every time we say anti-government, we gotta say white supremacist before or after it. And I'm like, all right,
not for nothing.
There's a lot of people that are anti-government, guys.
Yeah.
I mean,
quick sidebar about PBS though. If you look at the beginning, like brought to you by these people and viewers like you, these people are always like the Ford Foundation, the fucking Raytheon, fucking the Koch brothers and shit like that.
Yeah.
I'd say one thing that I noticed that from my rewatching of The Noble Lie, something which passed me by before, was that the Southern Poverty Law Center is basically even back then was being used as like a FBI spy organization
apparatus.
So the parts of the FOIA things that got turned over eventually were relating to the SPLC had agents in Elohim City spying on them, and so it's like it's not just sort of monitor. They say, oh yeah, we monitor them. They infiltrate them and collude with the FBI to provoke them into doing bad shit, so that they can promote the growth of the government and destroy freedom. That's what it's about.
I'm just gonna assume anything I do from now on, there's like 2 FBI and CIA agents in that thing. Like whatever.
Welcome to the club, dude.
What, dude? dude, there's so many times where it's like some crazy shit wouldn't happen if there wasn't like secretly an FBI agent that provoked the crazy shit to happen.
Right.
Well, you know why Uncle Ted got away with it for so long? It's because he acted alone.
Yeah.
Because like all these right-wing things are mainly, or largely,
They're groups.
The right-wing groups are all largely constructed and consisting of feds and fed stooges. So any kind of group, if you're talking to any kind of whether it be Islamic or right-wing or left-wing, no doubt, any kind of
They got dozens of people into those fucking left-wing groups in the 60s, dude.
Yeah, and they still do, I'm sure.
I'm sure, yeah.
But any kind of
fucking libertarian party, the libertarian party fucking what position was he? The chairman, dude. He got published in a WikiLeaks list of CIA informants.
Yeah.
Dude, get out of here! Come on, man. I'm just picturing every time Antifa and Proud Boys fight, it's just all FBI agents fucking each other up.
Dude, they all got that little curly like Agent Smith thing in their ear too.
Picture the whole army of Antifa and Proud Boys, but they're all wearing like thick glasses and they're just fucking each other up.
Oh my god! I bet the
blue windcoats.
I bet it's like the got to be the cushiest assignment, isn't it, to go undercover in the Proud Boys? Because like the worst thing that's going to happen to you is you get your underpants pulled down and you basically spend your.
You may end up doing some gay shit though.
Yeah,
without a doubt. You got to learn the cereals and you might have to touch a guy's dick.
It's basically drinking and eating cereal.
Oh fuck. Okay,
I'd never be a Proud Boy. I don't like cereal.
Wow, what a strong stance. I appreciate that.
For kids.
You are gay, I keep forgetting. So, I mean, it wouldn't be a big jump for you to become a Proud Boy.
No.
You got the sucking cock part down already. Anyway, what's it called, though? So McVeigh was, and Terry Nichols was also, as being the person who supposedly helped him construct this.
Yeah.
And another guy named Michael Fortier, for failing to rat was basically his crime. But they're all indicted for mostly for conspiracy to use a weapon of mass destruction. Look, I think this might be one of the first uses of that term, by the way.
Oh, weapons of mass destruction.
Yep, right. Time's a flat circle, dude. Yeah. Anyway, so here's a few things I wanted to point out is that one of the people who was consulted by the defense in the McVeigh case was this guy named I have it right here. His Jolyon West, who is like pretty much known as being the father of MK Ultra.
Yeah, and you've got to realize, as well as realizing, if you're involved in any anti-government group, you got to realize that everybody else in the group is a Fed, and then when you get put on trial, your defense team are also Feds.
Feds, yeah. I don't know what capacity he happened to advise them or not, but I do know that a lot of the time after his conviction, leading up to his eventual execution, he didn't say a lot. No. And he kind of had all of his thoughts were kind of compiled in a quote unquote authorized authorized biography. And a lot of it was like pretty not slanderous, but it had a lot of the earmarks of fingerprints of, like this is really a media spin.
Yeah.
Like his whole book, basically he said shit like, I knew that there was kids in there and I didn't care, blah, 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 blah. Like stuff that doesn't jive with Uncle Ted's analysis of him as a dude.
Yeah. And if there's one guy you trust, I mean, this is the thing, as I was saying about Ted Kaczynski, they didn't catch him because he acted alone.
Right.
Because, further than that, virtually everybody else, there's a pattern we've noticed in studying these kind of things. the only people they ever do catch are people where they've set them up. They've kind of taught them into it.
Bro, you find that so my wife watches all those like what did South Park call murder porn? Like she watches all those murder porn. Dude, and there's so many, like half the time it's literally like, all right, so we did basic police work and figured it out. Or the other version is we tried really hard, couldn't figure it out, then they gave themselves up.
Yeah. But
what is it with chicks of that age that love that shit? My wife loves it too, by the way.
I don't know what it is. I just
like the podcasts about it, and even
yeah, dude. My wife bangs out a lot of murder porn. It's like murder porn and Real Housewives. She loves it. I don't know what it is.
Good man. I wish the Real Housewives would get murder porned.
I think that well,
it's gonna take a while. There's like 10 fucking shows at this.
True.
point.
Yeah.
All these true crime podcasts take the same angle of, oh, isn't it terrible? Like, and oh, you know, but don't listen to this if you're easily upset, kind of bullshit. But that's exactly what that's just kind of the foreplay to it, isn't it? It's just, oh, you have to be careful listening to this. It's not suitable for people who are scared of things.
Right. It's like the page at the beginning of a porn site that says, click here to verify that you're 18 or older. And you were under 18 clicking it being like, oh, this feels so much wronger.
Yeah. There's I think the only true crime podcast that ever tried to make it funny is Pat Dixon's show, where he completely, laughs about people throwing a baby out the window and stuff like that, which I think is a much better angle, but evidently not too popular with the ladies.
Nope. Okay, so a couple other things before we wrap here. I wanted to mention that he was in 2001 was still, by the way, I think no, it couldn't have been. I was going to say maybe it was possibly still under the Clinton administration. That would be too perfect, but I don't think it was. What's it called? It's interesting note on his death certificate, his employer was listed as U.S. Army.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was weird.
Oh, boy. So, I feel like we've made a pretty compelling case that this was a CIA string-up, glow-in-the-dark job. Well, but there's so much information out there for this is what we like to say to the listeners every time is, go ahead, fact check me and email me where I'm fucking wrong.
Yeah. Yo, let me ask this question, though, because like we were talking about the whole time, there's so much shit that is just like, that's fucking weird, or that
we just scratched the surface too.
Yeah, but like the thing that was always tripping me up was why did they do it? Like, if it is a CIA,
okay, good point. I was coming to this,
and that's where, because there's plenty of shit that makes you.
Well, look at what happens after. So it's like this is the dry run for 9/11. What happens after is they get more power. The agencies get more money.
The Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act of 1996 was passed basically on the tail of this. And it was also being billed as the omnibus crime bill before. I'm not sure. It may be that Biden crime bill now that I'm thinking about it.
All these things, all these laws that are passed in response to all these atrocities that happen have already been through Congress or whatever once and not made it. Then the atrocity happens, and then they go through again and they make it.
Well, because it's like after moments like this, it's the easiest time to pass stuff like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I guess that would be. I'd have to look into the actual act and stuff, because I don't know if that.
I have it open here.
You got to look at government.
Permanently changed habeas corpus. And did what else is good? Providing restitution / assistance for victims of terrorism, the designation of foreign terrorist organizations and prohibitions on funding, removal or exclusion of alien terrorists and modifications of asylum procedures, restrictions on nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons, implementation of plastic explosives convention. Okay, that was a big one. Used to be able to buy C4. and you couldn't after this.
Huh.
Changes to the criminal law involving terrorist or explosives offenses. This is big. This is definitely, they put in a bunch of fucking little fine print about how much you can have, et cetera, and so forth, to prevent people from building stockpiles of weapons, including increased penalties and criminal procedures changes. Commissioning a study to determine the constitutionality of restrictions on bomb-making materials. That's a big one. Funding changes and jurisdiction clarifications for law enforcement related to terrorism threats, and miscellaneous provisions in their changing of habeas corpus.
But more than just the technical stuff, you got to remember. I mean, I came up when we were researching Waco. You see that they say the people inside the building were in a cult and died for it. But you look at those 4 ATF guys who thought it was okay to just smash through somebody's window into their bedroom and start shooting, and they got capped, right? They were in a cult too. Like, to think that that's
the federal
okay.
government is a cult.
Yeah, and the power of government is a cult. And it's like, I don't know, why did God send the flood? That's why, it's the same reason why the government would blow up the
I mean, also, again, we talked about this briefly before, but this was the office in which all of the paperwork related to the Whitewater Clinton scandal was housed.
But that's a practical aspect to it. But I'm saying there's there's like the religious aspect to it, where
everything they do is fucking religious.
The God has to keep the people in fear, and be the only person who can protect them. So that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that it's if people aren't afraid, they don't need the government as much. It's to keep them in a state of fear and dependency.
Wasn't the last thing even remotely like that was there was like the attempted World Trade Center?
Yeah, it was very shortly before that. They also used that as justification for this anti-terrorism and effective death penalty act too.
They're probably just like, we haven't had some crazy shit to stir things up.
Yeah. I've plugged this book before, but there's a great book called Heart of a Soldier. I forget who it's by, but it's a story of a guy called Rick Rescorla, who was the head of security at Morgan Stanley in 9/11. And that's a fascinating story. He predicted and told the Port Authority and the feds about the he predicted the 9/11 attacks, and he predicted the 93 attack, the basement bombing as well.
Right.
Because he actually infiltrated the mosque where where that was planned.
Oh, like he
was a serious
attack.
guy. He didn't predict the date or anything, but he knew what kind of thing they were going to do.
Oh, okay.
And he was so appalled by the first bombing, by the bombing of the World Trade Center, that he managed to get Morgan Stanley to give up the lease, but they had to let it run out, and it just had a few months left to go when 9/11 happened. But he'd managed to persuade them to leave and move to offices in New Jersey, because he was convinced it was a target for that kind of thing.
What's this book called?
Heart of a Soldier.
Oh, okay, cool.
It's really good. It's a fascinating biography as well, because it goes right back to his childhood, and he's a hell of a guy. He grew up in Cornwall in England. Met an American guy while he was working for the Zimbabwe police force. Ended up joining the Marines and going to Vietnam.
It all goes back to Rhodesia, doesn't it?
Everything goes back to Rhodesia.
It sure does.
Yeah.
Okay, one other thing I wanted to get to before we're done. What was the other thing I wanted to say? Oh, yeah. So, other than that, you said, as before, the Whitewater thing was like a practical reason, but I do think that this was a very effective way, because like the Waco thing had happened, and that was really, like, we forget. Like, I was a kid back then, and William, you're from England, so you didn't get the full fucking view of it, but I forgot, like, how fucking, like, regular people were kind of pissed off about the whole Waco thing, even just a little bit.
Yeah.
And there was like a growing feeling in the country. Again, there was all these militia groups and stuff, and it wasn't going to go along with the fucking, the endless wars programs. If everyone's becoming a Buchananite Republican, they're not going to vote in the fucking, the neocons. Yeah. So I think that this was a really effective way to not only put a national distaste in the mouth for that kind of ideology,
Yeah.
but B, also kind of have a negative association related to people who are pissed off about Waco.
Yeah. If you're pissed off about Waco, it means you're okay with OKC.
You're Timothy McVeigh, yes.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Yeah, because like Waco, you kind of have to have that like fear spin around Waco, because if you really look at if you look at how it started, why they rolled up on them, and then you see the resulting event of like why you're just like, bare minimum, you're like, overreaction, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you look into the kind of people they were, it really, really was.
It is that. I mean, like it's the Ruby Ridge, Waco, OKC. I mean, I've kind of got deep enough into it that I don't really see the distinction between Ruby Ridge and Waco and OKC. They're kind of the same thing to me.
Yes.
But because the Feds did all three of those, they started it, and they
finished it.
The most charitable thing you can say about OKC is maybe it was meant to be a sting and it ran away from them. But they shouldn't be setting people up for shit like that. That's what they did to Randy Weaver. Oh, saw the end off this shotgun for us.
Yeah.
Oh, now you're on gun charges. Now we want you to go to this and infiltrate this right-wing group. And he's like, oh, fuck you, I'm not doing it. So next thing you know, they're shooting his dog and his kid.
And his wife.
Yeah, I forgot that's why. I was trying to remember how Ruby Ridge, and I'm like, yeah, it's the fucking, they told him to sawed off shotguns. It's like, yeah, we wouldn't, if you guys didn't tell him to do that, this wouldn't have.
And they do it the same with the Muslim kids. They get some dumb idea. I mean, Christ, when you're a teenager,
Muslim kids. Yeah.
When you're a teenager, you get angry about shit, and of course. And so, hey,
if you got a fucking sweet talking FBI agent giving you attention, going, hey, dude, you know, it'd be so badass if you fucking, aren't you pissed off about endless wars in the Middle East?
I mean, not for nothing, the ATF mole at Elohim City was fucking hot, especially by, those kind of places.
Fed standards.
I mean, well, those kind of, I know there's a lot of hot Trump chicks, but like, there's not so many hot backwards right wing religious community chicks. You know what I mean?
Yeah. If you're like a backwoods right wing, what were they? White supremacists?
White separatists.
Oh, separatists, and you get a genuinely hot chick. You're like, I'll do whatever the fuck you say. I'll fucking start off or bomb whatever you need me to.
She don't even have to. In fact, if she starts fucking him, she loses her power. It's like, don't give the milk away. If she's just nice to him, or even if she's real mean to him, just the fact that she's a hot chick, that she's the boss.
Yeah, for real.
Anyway, so I guess that's a good place to stop. I guess that's basically my take on the fucking, I mean, it's like, to the listeners, historyhomers@gmail.com if you want to fucking tell me I'm an asshole and prove to me where I'm wrong, but I don't think you will.
Yeah, I think it's a good wrap-up episode for that sort of trilogy.
Arc. Yeah.
I mean, the sequel is the Next Generation is 9/11, which I guess we could revisit at some point.
Yeah. And Andy, you were awesome guest to have along with. I failed to mention this at the beginning, but me and Andy have been Facebook friends. I actually don't have a Facebook anymore, but we've been Facebook friends for I want to say 6 years.
Oh yeah, we have.
Yeah, because we met. I don't know if I want to fully disclose what Facebook group we were both both members of, but
that's right. That's where we met. It was
it was the Dave Smith Libertarian Podcast.
I was gonna
Facebook
say
group.
if you don't say it, now it's gonna sound worse.
I know now it's gonna be like Stormfront.
Yeah. It was we started the Stormfront Facebook group. And
Elohim City holiday rentals.
But it was awesome to finally meet you, and it was an awesome time and talking about this.
I appreciate that, because I'm like, I'm a comedian and everything, but I'm also like a comedy fan. So like I started out as a comedy fan, became a comedian. So this shit ends up happening, and it's like I can relate and also be the comic. It's fun. You've
been a really great guest, very nice, comfortable to talk to. Absolutely perfect. Thank you very much for coming on.
What would you like to plug?
Just check out two things. Check out my podcast, Panties in the Mouth. Me and Nate Marshall, comedy podcast. We shoot the shit.
He's really funny too, by the way.
Nate's super fucking funny. He's been on, a whole bunch of stuff. He's been on Compound, Matt and Shane, Gas Digital shit. Super funny dude. Yeah, Panties in the Mouth. We actually don't talk a lot of politics. It's just us talking about porn, and we talked about.
We have 2 episodes a week, dude. We don't touch politics on the second one.
Oh, okay. Yeah. We fucking spent like 20 minutes today talking about Transformers. It was a blast. And also, Andy Malafrina is all my social media, Twitter, Instagram. Check out my YouTube channel. I talk about a lot of music. And on Twitch, twitch.tv/Andy Got Jokes. Come hang out with me. Watch me play video games poorly.
And so you can check out all our stuff, www.historyhomos@gmail.com. You can follow us across social media, Twitter, Instagram, and Parler at HistoryHomosPod. You can, again, as I said before, if you have a fucking problem, email me at historyhomos@gmail.com. And you can follow me on Instagram at Scott Lizard Abrams. William.
World War I was an inside job.
Later, homos.